This paper looks at the viral persistence of COVID in children. Before we start, I want to note that this is a personal view paper. This means that it's the author's opinion based off of a literature review, and while it is a literature-based opinion, it is still a peer-reviewed article. Diving in, we start off by noting that the pediatric definition for long COVID is similar to that of adults, where in this article, the authors will discuss the evidence of possible COVID persistence in the pediatric population, how that might affect the patient, and then how this may also lead to long COVID in the long term. Starting with viral persistence in adults, COVID has been found in people's bodies during autopsies weeks to months after initial infection, where COVID has been detected in multiple tissue groups, such as the central nervous system, like the brain, in the lungs and the extrapulmonary space, that area around the lungs, in addition to the breast, appendix, and skin. Besides the potential of viral persistence being a basis for long COVID, there is evidence that persistent virus in the patient can replicate, evolve, and even generate new variants. Next, diving into the pediatric population and COVID viral persistence, about 24% of the studies reported COVID viral persistence in the pediatric population during autopsies for those that had multi-inflammatory syndrome in children, MISC, where some of these patients had viral fragments in their GI system. Another pediatric case detected COVID in the cerebral spinal fluid, while others on neonates found viral persistence of COVID in the tonsils and adenoids of children who had asymptomatic infection and recovered. And this is an image of what those are. Another study found COVID viral fragments in the brain of a child aged 14 months who died of COVID pneumonitis. And this brain tissue infection was also found in a case study of a girl that was 5 years old. Furthermore, COVID has been identified in the mesenteric lymph nodes in young pediatric patients, which is this area of the stomach right here. And when the authors looked at the presence of COVID in neonates and stillborn babies, there was viral RNA in the lung tissue, liver, the spleen, the trachea, the stomach, and even heart samples gave positive results. In addition to the liver vascular endothelium, so the inside of those veins within the liver also had detection of COVID, and of course the lungs. What's very interesting is that COVID can infect monocytes and macrophages, where they're not necessarily producing more COVID, but they're being preserved, so they're preserving infectivity. And these are those immune mediated cells, which is possibly how the virus is spreading to all these various regions of the bodies, is that COVID is hitching a ride through these immune mediated cells, traveling to those other areas of the body, and then existing there for viral persistence. Kids that get COVID can have new onset immune mediated diseases such as type 1 diabetes, but a clear and causal link between COVID and type 1 diabetes has not yet been proven. And interestingly, there are two publications describing 3 children with long COVID and chronic GI symptoms with evidence of persistent viral shedding, which is likely part of the reason why our wastewater lows are getting higher every year. It's likely that number includes long COVID people with GI symptoms that are chronically shedding in addition to active COVID cases. But ultimately, this is showing that yes, long COVID can happen in kids. Some people consider this a psychosomatic condition, meaning that they think it's all in the person's head. However, there's direct biological evidence in patients with long COVID that is overwhelming and can't be ignored, meaning there's a biological basis behind the symptoms. It's not all in the person's head.